Welcome to the latest edition of the Celtics Rundown live stream. I'm your host, Bobby Krivitsky, and joining me today, a special guest from the other side of this first round battle, the senior writer over at Orlando Magic Daily and the host of Locked On Magic. We've got Philip Rossman-Reich. Philip, appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me, and welcome to the City Beautiful. Hopefully, this will be a fun weekend for you guys.
Yeah, I was just telling you before the show went live that I was able to walk around, enjoy the city a little bit. Nice to be out in the sun because in Boston, we don't get a lot of that.
It was nice and sunny when we were there this week. I was very happy with the weather in Boston. Like maybe not happy with the results of the game, but the weather could not have been better. Thanks for the hospitality, Boston. Appreciate it so much.
Yeah, Mother Nature has been on our side. We had a mild winter as well,
Yeah.
so no complaints from either end of where the series has taken us. And looking into Game 2's results, Philip, Celtics win 109-100. They're now halfway to punching their ticket to the second round. What did you see last night from an Orlando perspective?
Yeah, a lot of the problems that I think we anticipated in this series and a lot of the problems that have kind of hurt this Magic team throughout the course of the season. Bottom line, this season for the Magic, they have had a lot of games like this one, even against like really quality opponents where they do a lot of things really right, but because their shooting is so unreliable and they could play a great game, get all the shots they want, and they just miss shot after shot after shot, it just makes every other mistake feel so huge. It's not like the Celtics completely crushed them on the offensive glass. They were obviously above average on the offensive glass, but because Orlando doesn't have the offensive firepower or capabilities to answer any of those runs, they don't have that cushion of a three-pointer. You know, they don't know if they're going to make threes on a consistent basis. And so, especially against an elite defensive team like Boston, and even without Tatum, they're playing elite defense. Even with the offense playing better in Game 2 than it did in Game 1, not being able to do this basic skill, it just throws everything out of whack, and it just makes the margin for error way too small for the Magic to compete even.
Yeah, and I think because of the Magic's shooting struggles, as good as they are defensively, as much as their physicality can wear on opponent, we've seen that happen to the Celtics at times in these first two games. It just, those losses on the margins, like second chance points where it's 20-10 Celtics in Game 2 the other night, and the offensive rebounds are 13-7 in favor of the host. It's a compounding effect where you feel it that much more because of those long range struggles. And so when you look at Orlando's offense, because Banchero's been really good overall, and Franz Wagner has certainly had some really impressive moments and strong showing, but who around those two in particular do you look at and say, this individual or these couple of individuals need to step up?
I mean, I think the biggest one is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I mentioned this on my pod after the game on Wednesday. They signed him for this series. They signed him for these games. And I know he didn't have the greatest playoffs last year, and like shooters have bad nights. Like if you're going to be a volume shooter, the best shooters shoot 40% from three. That means you're going to have some stinkers. You're not just shooting 2 for 4, 2 for 5 every single game. But in this spot, with all the stakes involved, with the Boston was not easy and was not like a pushover even without Jason Tatum. I felt like I needed to make that clear to everybody. That's because they don't have Tatum doesn't mean they're not capable of winning. But that door was wide open. And so for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to go 0 for 6 and 1 for 9 from 3, with all the added stuff that got heaped on him, which the Magic tried very hard to ignore, but I think KCP understood it, wanted to play it up, but you can't play it up and then have a stinker. The Magic signed him to be their shooter. He has struggled with that for most of the season. He seemed to find some rhythm and some revival toward the end of the season. They needed him in the playoffs. They brought him in for his championship experience. To have that kind of shooting performance when they get him the shots, and you could go back and watch them, most of them are pretty good looks or looks you would expect him to make. To go 0 for 6 is just, it's unacceptable, and it's just another like nail in the coffin for certainly fans wanting to move on from Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and find a different answer.
Yeah, even I saw plenty of Magic fans on Twitter not pleased with the contract and what he's not bringing to the table. And I wonder if this situation and how amplified it's been, especially playing in Boston where you injure their star player, as opposed to if this happened at the comforts of your home stadium. I wonder if this is just not, from a mentality standpoint, conducive to KCP being at his best. So he says all the right things. He's kind of, certainly from a Celtics perspective and to the fans on this live stream, playing the role of the villain and seems to be embracing that and owning it. And hey, this is the playoffs. This is how I play and how I operate. But then, like you said, he comes out and is a total dud, 3 points in 35 minutes. I wonder if this is just not how you get the best out of KCP.
Yeah, I mean, it's been weird. Like it's been weird. I mean, I know, like, first off, like, they don't have Nikola Jokic. Like, a lot of Magic fans specifically, and I don't think this is like accurate at all. A lot of Magic fans have said Kentavious Caldwell-Pope played the Magic. He had his most successful seasons with LeBron James and Nikola Jokic. And I'm just like, look, I mean, Paolo Banchero's not on their level yet, but Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's shot profile is completely the same. Same number of 3-point attempts, or virtually the same number of 3-point attempts as last year, maybe a little bit down. Same number of like wide open 3-point attempts. It's just been this weird thing where he just had this random down year. And for Magic, it'd be one thing if it were, if he had this kind of season with like the Celtics and they have like, oh, we got Derek White, we got Jaylen Brown. He doesn't need to be on all the time. Like if Kentavious Caldwell-Pope were on the Celtics, and don't hate me, Celtics fans, for putting that hypothetical out there. I'm just the Celtics are the team we're dealing with. They're a prolific 3-point shooting team. If he were on that kind of a team like he was with Denver last year, they can turn to other weapons if he doesn't have it that night. The Magic don't have that, especially when Jalen Suggs went out, who was taking a lot more 3-pointers, a lot more spot-up threes. The Magic just don't have enough 3-point shooting to sustain bad Kentavious Caldwell-Pope shooting for very long. And again, you can't play up and be the villain and then not show up in the game. Like, at the end of the day, all that stuff's extra. I think, for all the talk and all the kind of intensity that was brought to it, I thought the Magic, for being such a young team, like, handled the questions very well. They said, we didn't think much of it. It was just like, we're sorry that he got hurt. We don't want him to be hurt. We think it was the kind of the fall that kind of escalated things. We thought it was just a hard playoff foul. You go around, like in the immediate aftermath of the game, I think even on the broadcast, they said that it was just a hard playoff foul. They questioned why it should be a flagrant. I think TNT did the same thing. Obviously, you don't want anyone getting hurt. I want to be very, very sincere and open about that. So I think the Magic, as a young team, like, handled those questions and kind of handled that the right way, and just wanted to go out and play the game and say, we're not going to apologize for who we are as a team, what made us successful. We're a hard-hitting team. Magic led the league in free throw rate allowed. They're going to foul you. They're trying to get fouled themselves, which is what they've struggled with a lot this series, but they're not going to apologize for their identity. But you've got to show up and play if you're going to play up this sideshow thing that's happening. Because at the end of the day, the Celtics can probably say these things because they're the better team. The Magic are the ones chasing. If they can distract the Magic with something, that just makes their job easier. And that seemed to be what happened on Wednesday night.
So I think that this series is really beneficial to the Celtics in the long term because of the physicality that Orlando presents, how they're challenging them. And that includes this whole situation with KCP and obviously Tatum. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Joe Mazzulla on Boston radio today, said that it's a severe bone bruise. So the injury report is out, and Tatum is listed as doubtful, which we were anticipating, and be surprised if he plays. There's a chance
And I was on a flight with a bunch of other Orlando media reporters, and I was just like, and before this even came out, I was just like, if I were Boston, I wouldn't even think about playing Tatum until the Magic win a game. If you can get out of this series and just give Tatum rest, there's no reason to risk making any little knock worse. If you're good enough to get out of this series without any problems, do that. Like, there's no reason to push him. I'm a Magic guy. I'm probably higher on the Magic than I should be in this series. I had this series as a hard 5, with like the Magic winning a game and then a close game somewhere, tipping it in Boston's favor, for 5 rather than 6. Boston's really good. But the Celtics are going to the second round. They're going to the conference finals. those are the games you got to be thinking about. You've got another 6 weeks of this. Don't like you need to like Boston needs to survive this series. They were probably very upset to see Orlando at 7 for that reason. Because Orlando's been a playoff team. Like they know what they're doing. They, they're not, they're young, they're flawed, but they know who they are and they know how they play. Boston's probably not happy to see Orlando just because they know they're going to take a pounding and they got to get out of the series quick. But you're right. They'll be better for it, especially if they end up having to face Detroit, which is a very similar kind of physical defensive team.
Yeah. And the Pistons have been better than the Knicks to start that series overall. Yep. And they're a fourth quarter complete collapse where they just fell through the floor basically from potentially being up 2-0 with both games at Madison Square Garden. So we'll see how that series progresses from a Celtics standpoint, because I'm totally with you on how to manage Tatum. My only concern with that approach is Jaylen Brown is dealing with the knee injury, and that required the pain management injections before the playoffs. And so he had to go 42 minutes the other night. How much wear and tear and added mileage are you putting on him if you continue to rest Tatum? So again, I don't think Tatum plays at a minimum in game 3. He's listed as doubtful, but I do think they have to be diligent. I don't know, especially just 2 days later, if they can run Jaylen Brown 40 plus minutes.
And every game, the rest of the series only has 1 day between games. Like it's like we had this, we had the long break between game 1 and game 2. Now it comes fast and furious. Now it's just like, now we're in like the sprint to the finish of the series. Like if I'm Boston, you got to get this thing done as soon as possible. Game 3 is obviously the game. I think most of us would probably believe that if Orlando loses game 3, the series is essentially over. It probably ends up as a sweep if they lose on Friday. Like this is the Magic season is very much on the line Friday night at the Kia Center.
Yeah, I even wonder how it might impact the Celtics approach if Jaylen Brown logs heavy minutes in Tatum's absence in game 3 and Boston wins. How does that impact minutes and all of that and load management, so to speak, in game 4?
I would say this, don't risk load management. Like the thing is
Agreed.
about this Magic team is like, they're going to defend you well enough. If they get hot, if they get a good shooting night, if they get an average shooting night, for league average, not them average, league average, they're good enough to beat you. And, totally. You don't want the wear and tear. Like Celtics have a long road ahead of them. The quicker you get out of these first round series, the better. And honestly, the Celtics should be going all out for a sweep. Like I'm reading through the comments on my video from last night, from my video on Wednesday night, breaking down the game. And I called the Celtics the more desperate team. And there's a lot of people who took that the wrong way. But to me, watching how the Celtics played, they were the team that wanted it more. Like they were first to all the loose balls. They looked like a team that knew they were making up a deficit. And not that Orlando didn't play hard. Orlando, I thought, played really hard and played better in game 2 than they did in game 1. They just made too many like little mistakes. The Celtics, though, I felt like were playing like the team that was down 0-1. That they needed that win. They got to have that same attitude, and I think Jaylen Brown said it after the game. Like they have that attitude of like the next game is going to be harder than the last game. Like they know, like this is a team that knows the challenge ahead of them. And like, look, Orlando was down 2-0 in the series last year to Cleveland. They came home. They won game 3 running away. They won game 4, and all of a sudden it was a series. The old adage that a series does not start till the road team wins still holds true. The Magic have not been as good at home this year. There'll be a fair amount of green at the Kia Center. That's just the way it is. But it's going to be a charged environment for Orlando. This is a team that runs very much on vibes. If they can get that crowd going, they'll have some propulsion. They'll have some wind behind their sails to get back into the series. Like it looks very bleak, and the Magic have to play a whole heck of a lot better. But the series is still getting going. Like we'll again, Friday's a turning point game. Friday is a big game, as every game in a series is. This is a big game, and if the Magic can win it, then all of a sudden confidence swings back to their end.
1,000%. And I don't think it would surprise anyone. The Magic, the mental toughness, the Celtics have repeatedly praised them, for they don't go away. And so that's what the Celtics point to with the long-term in mind in particular. They keep coming to the podium and saying there's 10 to 15 possessions. There's 15 to 20 plays where we have to be better. And maybe the margin for error is wide enough in this series that you can survive. But they know even against Cleveland, that might not cut it. And it could be why you ultimately go home and come up short. Certainly if you see OKC in the finals. And so this series, like we were saying, it's a really good testing ground to just kind of sharpen the Celtics moving forward. Another area that I'm sure, much like the KCP discourse, has been all over your timelines, your mentions, your comments, and that is the free throw disparity. And it was 33-24 in favor of Boston last night at TD Garden. The Celtics were able to generate 10 more points at the charity stripe because of it. In your mind, did you feel like the officiating was unfair or felt inconsistent?
I felt it was inconsistent, and I am not one to complain about officiating. There were at least, I would say this, the Magic fouled. There were a lot of the fouls that I thought the Magic were called for. There were a few bump fouls on shots that was just like, that's not a playoff foul. Like, that's a, let's see if the shot goes in. If it goes in, don't let it go. If it doesn't, call the foul late. Like, that's, I get those trade-offs. I agree with those trade-offs. I agree in like instituting like advantage like they have in soccer a little bit. Like, if it doesn't affect the shot and you make the shot, so what? But I felt like the Magic were overly physical. They couldn't find the line of what was a foul and what wasn't. And Boston earned their free throws. Again, Orlando, you kind of have to go on type here. Orlando had the worst free throw rate allowed in the league. The Magic very much subscribed to the philosophy that the refs can't call everything. Let's see where that line is. And like typically, like when Jalen Suggs is in the game, he'll like harass a ball handler, kind of wait till he gets that first foul call, and then he'll be like, okay, that's the line. That's the line I can't cross. And then he's good for the rest of the game. I felt like a lot of the Magic's frustration was that the fouls they were being called for, they weren't getting back in return. So like Goga Bitadze deserved the flagrant foul for elbowing Kristaps Porzingis. Like that was 100% a flagrant foul. There's wind up, there's all those criteria. Wendell Carter earlier in the game was wondering where was the foul when Al Horford hit me in the face. Where was that foul? There was, I think, a shot where Paolo Banchero got bumped and he made this like wild runner. He didn't get a foul call on that, but Jaylen Brown got one for a bump foul on, for like Paolo Banchero like put his hands behind his back. Brown got into his body a little bit. Again, that's a foul. I'm not disagreeing that that's a foul. I think what the Magic were frustrated with was the lack of consistency. It's just that they feel, the Magic, the way their offense is set up, the way that they make up for their lack of three-point shooting is they get to the foul line. They're second in the league in free throw rate. Boston's like first in the league in not giving up free throws. So that was always going to be a tension point in the series and something the Magic had to figure out. And they haven't been able to figure out how to get to the line consistently in this series. Like when Orlando made their little run in the third quarter after giving up the 11-0 or 15-0 run or whatever it was, they got a couple of those fouls and a couple of those and ones. So you could kind of start seeing them like get some rhythm, get some mojo about them. I just think that what frustrated the Magic was the lack of consistency. Like there were at least three calls in Wednesday's game that were just straight box outs that the Magic got called for. And like the Caleb Houston one I thought was like 50-50, and on review, it's always going to go to what they called on the floor. There was that box out. There was that play where Wendell Carter boxed out Kristaps Porzingis, and Porzingis tried to jump over him, and they called the foul on Carter. And, like when I looked
at
the
still frame going around last night of that specific play.
Exactly. And like there were at least like two instances of that where it's just like the Magic aren't allowed to box them out. They're going to get called for a foul. And I think Boston got called for one too. So I'm not going to say it's complete. It was like completely one-sided. The Magic fouled. The Celtics earned a lot of their free throws. I'm not disagreeing that the Magic fouled. I think what frustrated was the Magic didn't feel like they were getting the same whistles, just inconsistent on each side of the floor. And look, Orlando wants to be a physical team. I anticipated after all the talking that the officials would call the game a lot tighter than they did. I was expecting like 40 free throws between the teams. I'm actually kind of happy that they let them play as much as they did. To be perfectly honest, and even after the Al Horford, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope dust up, which I don't know what was going on there. Like I get like they were clearly on a collision course. I don't want to cause any trouble. because I wasn't really watching the play. I only saw like replays of it. It to me, it kind of looked like Al Horford tried to run into Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's path as much as Kentavious Caldwell-Pope tried to trip him. I thought it was certainly a double technical. They should have both gotten like warnings for like more serious warnings for it. It's a collision. It's whatever. Ty's always going to go to the offense. I expected the whistle to be a lot tighter after that, and to the rest to have like no patience for anything after that, especially knowing what's going on. But generally, I just don't think the officials had much control over the game and didn't set what the line was. But again, officials don't decide games. You got to make your shots, which the Magic didn't. You got to dig out some of those rebounds, which the Magic didn't. You got to make your free throws, which the Magic didn't. They missed 9 free throws in the game, in a 9-point game. You know, Boston missed their fair share of free throws too, but you got to make the opportunities that you get. Orlando left way too much on the floor, and you know, the officiating might have been frustrating, but it wasn't anywhere near the reason why they lost.
Yeah, and it's no surprise, but Al Horford thought it was intentional and dirty, and KCP tried to trip him. I mean, anyone could have figured out that was the route he was going to go, especially after being so vocal about what happened in game 1. And he's telling Caldwell-Pope, that's the 3rd time that you've done this game. Yep. And he didn't back down from that at all when we spoke to him.
I was 100% expecting somebody, probably Al Horford. I was 100% expecting somebody to get hit. Like first time down the lane. Like I was a little bit afraid, like the first time Paolo goes down the lane and goes up for a dunk or a layup, someone's going to elbow him in the ribs. And that's what you expect in a situation like that. You dispense your own justice. You make a statement early about it. It's like, hitting the other guy's pitcher after they hit or hitting the other guy's batter after you get hit by a pitch. That's what you do. You expect it, you brace for it. So I wasn't surprised that there's a little bit of talking going on down on the court. These are two feisty physical teams, and this is a fight. Like everyone knows it.
Yeah, and if it's going to be anyone, it's going to be the guy that went up for a dunk and elbowed Giannis in the face to give him a taste of his own medicine a few years ago. But it's funny because the calls, I agree with you that it wasn't consistent and the refs didn't do a great job in that sense of policing it. But whereas the Magic, on one hand, it could have been a tremendous disadvantage to them if it's all of a sudden everything is getting whistled, because we feel like we've got to keep the lid on this game and make sure that cooler heads prevail here. Simultaneously, they're upset that, hey, we're not getting some of the calls that we're seeing the Celtics are, but the Celtics are kind of giving it right back to them in the form of some really stupid fouls. Like you mentioned, some of those and ones, just some unnecessary or soft fouls that did nothing to detract from the reason that it's a potential 3-point play in the first place. The Celtics had plenty of head shaking, not sound moments right there that you wouldn't expect from a championship team, but human nature is what it is. And the Celtics have repeatedly proven over the years that they're far from immune to those type of lapses.
Yeah. And like, that's the challenge of the series like this, where, like points are at a premium. Like, I mean, the raw numbers are what they are. The scores are down. These are the two like lowest possession teams in the league. Everybody feels the intensity of every possession because there's just so few of them out there. And, I think so much, certainly on the Magic side, so much of this series is how much can you just let the next play happen, or like your focus on the next play, because, you're going to make mistakes in the course of a game. And the thing with Boston is they're going to make you pay for your mistakes. So if you make a mistake, if you turn the ball over, it goes into a 3, that's fine. What can't happen is you go down, take a bad shot. That leads to a long rebound. That leads to another 3. You can't turn the ball over again. That leads to a bad 3. And that's been the Magic's biggest issue in the series on, shooting, offense, all that stuff. The biggest issue for them, I think one of the bigger issues for the Magic in the series is when they make mistakes, it's turned into 2 mistakes, turned into 3 mistakes, turned into 4 mistakes. And that'll happen for even 3 or 4 minutes. And that's enough for Boston to build a 15-point lead. And the Magic find themselves, they get a timeout, they get a bath, they get something that calms them back down. But now you're down 15 trying to come back. And it's just so hard to climb uphill against the Celtics team because they put so much stress on your defense. Even when you're defending pretty well, they just put so much stress on your defense and make you pay for like even the tiniest mistakes. They really punish you for it.
So where I want to go next, and that's a perfect segue, is what stood out to you in speaking with the Magic postgame. And I asked that question with that specific answer in mind. And I'm curious to know, because I would assume they did talk about that, what they had to say, what they were willing to share publicly about that.
Yeah, I think that the big talking point was, they have to cut out the mistakes. Like in game one, it was turning the ball over. They turned the ball over 15 times for 28 points. Boston had 26 fast break points. If I looked this up, it was the first time the Celtics had 26 or more fast break points in a game since October against the Bulls, I think.
They're not an up-tempo attack at all.
No, they're not, which is weird because like it feels like their avalanches come when they get those like kind of up-tempo threes. They catch you before your defense is set. They catch you in cross matches or like communication errors. Like, again, you just have to be so on your toes about things.
Well, so that's the key. Sorry to jump in, but that actually, Joe Mazzulla told me that's how he defines pace is quickly getting out and then make the right reads, get to the right spaces, and play out of the advantages it creates. So for him, he doesn't look at pace specifically with the roster he has as get the ball up and down the court quickly.
It's not about possession.
Everyone
Magic
gets
the same way.
Yep.
Yeah, Magic, like the Magic don't have the offensive weapons, but their philosophy is the same way. These are two elite defensive teams. And if you're an elite defensive team, possession counts are going to be low because you're forcing the other team into longer possessions. So, they're not able to get up and down on you. But what you want to do, and I think the Magic did a much better job of this in game two, is they got the ball up the court quickly. There wasn't as much, there's still some of it. There wasn't as much of the standing, waiting for the set to happen. You're getting into your action at 14, 13, 12 seconds. The Magic were pretty consistent, getting up the court, initiating actions at like 19, 20, 18 seconds, maybe 17 at the latest. Right, yeah, that's that. Like Jamal Mosley talks a lot about getting over the midcourt line by 20, 21 seconds. Like they want to get it out faster. And that's been something they have to kind of push themselves to do. But obviously, like the Celtics fell into this trap at various times in the first two games too, where they're trying to force the ball to the star and it just takes a little too long. And then the defense is able to kind of load up and be ready for what he's going to bring. Like that's like the offensive stall out when you go that slowly in the half court. So the Magic, I think, were generally pretty happy with how they played. They said, we made too many mistakes. We fouled too much, gave up too many offensive rebounds. They were generally happy with their offense. They missed shots. That's been the common occurrence for this team throughout the year. I think they feel like if they shot a regular percentage, they would have been in the game. Again, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was 0 for 6. If he makes even 2 of those, we're looking at a completely different game. Even two of them. Completely different game. And so some of it is the Magic are kind of resigned to their weaknesses. Like they know there are just some things they can't count on that they know they can do. As long as Paolo and Franz are kind of doing their thing, everything else is just like, it's either going to happen or it's not. They're either going to trust it or it's not. And like game one, I thought the Magic fell into the trap of not trusting that those shots will fall or trusting to move the ball to the next guy. And so you had a lot of Paolo isolation, a lot of Franz isolation, them just trying to like bang their head against the wall that is the Celtics defense. I thought in game two, they trusted the other guys to make shots, and that trust wasn't rewarded. Process was correct, results were not. And so I think there's just a feeling of the Magic are going to come back home. They're going to feel that energy of their home crowd. They're going to hit some shots. They're going to get some rhythm, get some of that juice going. And if they do a lot of the things that they did in games 1 and 2 defensively, they'll give themselves a chance. I mean, I think there is a very big difference between this series this year and the series last year against Cleveland. And that is, I think there is just an understanding this Boston team is so tough in a way that, Cleveland last year was not this. And I think they know that. I think they feel it. But by the same token, they lost by 16 last year in game 1 at Cleveland. They lost by like 11 or 12 last year at Cleveland. They played game 1 and game 2 very similar to how they played game 1 and game 2 last year. Now they get to go home and we'll see what they can do.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how this Magic team responds tomorrow night when they finally get a chance to return home, what that looks like. I think we'll see more comfort and more swagger from them. And maybe that translates to more makes from beyond the arc. We've got a few items left to hit on here, Philip. We'll start with this one. Getting to cover the Celtics up close now. What have you learned about them this series?
The thing I think I've learned about them is just how in tune they are. Like Boston was my pick to win the championship. Like I'll come out and say it straight up. I think they're going to repeat. I have so much tremendous respect for everything that they do. And there is, I know we talked a little bit about how maybe some of that poise was shaken by what the Magic are doing, but there is a poise about them. They know what the end goal is. Like they know how to do this now. And like the big, like as someone who covers the Magic and covering them long term, I entered this series like knowing it was going to be a tall task to win these games. And I said, like, this is really a measuring stick of where the Magic are at. To just bring it back to me again. This is a measuring stick of where the Magic are at. The Magic want to be where Boston is. That's, whether it's next year, 2 years, 3 years. I don't think this will be the last time the Magic and Celtics see each other in the playoffs with Tatum, Brown, Paolo, Franz. Like those are the four main guys. We're gonna get another one of these. And I've been describing this series as very similar to the 2008 second round against Detroit, but the Magic and the Pistons. Magic were, first playoff experience, got swept by Detroit in the first round, championship team, taught a young team a lesson. They come back next year, win the division, get to the second round, first playoff win in 12 years. They face the Pistons, get thumped in 5 games. And it's just like, there is a difference between a young team on the rise and a championship level team. This Celtics team is a championship level team. They do everything at such a high level. They adjust to whatever the game is throwing at them. They have supreme confidence. They have an aura about them. Like this Celtics team is as good as everyone says it is, and they're probably better than people think they are.
I think that's why it's pretty evident that long term, this series does more for the Magic than it does the Celtics. Certainly this playoff run, it helps Boston a lot here, like we talked about. But for Orlando, and what I've been so impressed by about them, to kind of flip the question and then answer it myself, getting to see them up close, is that mental toughness that they might have some sloppy stretches. They might let go of the rope at times a little bit. But as the Celtics have credited them with, they don't go away. That physical approach that is their backbone, they know they can rely on. Even if, again, they let go of the rope, they come right back to it pretty quickly, especially against an opponent of this caliber. So I think that in the long run, this series, what it's doing for Orlando's mental toughness, resolve, and that just learning how to win in this setting, I think is going to do a lot of good for, in particular, the 2 stars over there in Banchero and Wagner.
I mean, and more immediately, though, like, this series is showing the front office that they have a lot of work to do. And look, this series, the season is very different if Jalen Suggs is playing right now.
1,000%.
The series is very different if Mo Wagner doesn't tear his ACL. Like the Magic are just so limited.
Celtics killer, by the way, Mo Wagner.
Celtics killer, exactly. The Magic are so limited in their offensive weapons. And like this is a 7 seed. This is a 41-41 team. They are fatally flawed. They are not meant to compete at the highest levels against a team like the Celtics. Orlando, if you told Orlando at the beginning of the season, hey, you're going to be in a playoff series with the Celtics and probably lose and get humbled, they'd be like, awesome. That means we got to the second round. That means we got a playoff win. We made that growth. This is the Magic learning a lot of these lessons in a more disappointing way, but in another way. The Magic, I think this summer have a really difficult task. And it's been really hard. If you follow any Magic fans, everybody's already talking about the offseason. Like, it's not that they think the series is over. It's just they know what this team's flaws are and what needs to happen to get to this level more consistently. They have the stars in place. That's the hard part. Everyone just knows, like, we got 2 guys, we got 2 dudes. We're going to show up on big stages. Even though Franz isn't hitting any threes, he's showing up. He's finding ways to contribute. He's still a big factor in this series. Whether the shooting comes or not is the great mystery of all mysteries. The Magic are going to have to make some changes. And the big thing this summer is, how do the Magic add players with an offensive identity and offensive mentality without sacrificing the resiliency and the defensive mentality that they have, because it's hard to find those two-way players. Boston is one of the few teams that has seemingly found that magic formula, and that's why they are where they are, because they have guys who are bought in defensively and aren't afraid offensively. You look at the Magic, they got all these guys who are bought in defensively. Like they will defend their tails off. But, when Wendell Carter gets the ball, he's not a quick leaper. So he brings the ball down, surrounded by three big players, can't finish around the basket. 3-point shooting is inconsistent. He'll pass up open shots. Anthony Black, improving shooters, come a long, long way this season. Not the most confident guy on the ball. Outside of Paolo and Franz, really the only guy currently healthy on the roster that can attack off the dribble is Cole Anthony, and he is completely unplayable in the series. Boston has played him off the floor in both games 1 and 2, and so the Magic's ability to create offense and to give the defense a break, allow the defense to have a bad quarter. They don't get that, and that's why they're 41-41, and that's why their margin for error is so small. They've got to find a way. They got to find a way to maintain their defensive identity while adding the necessary offensive pieces to compete with the Celtics team. Because sometimes when you're playing the Celtics, you just got to be able to put the ball in the basket. And the Magic haven't been able to do that consistently.
Yeah, I think there's a decent amount of people listening right now thinking, man, that was supposed to be Kentavious Caldwell-Pope.
Yep.
And it's that archetype, and he had the championship pedigree and all of that. Apparently need to aim a little bit higher, but I wonder, Philip,
the injuries hurt. Like not having Jalen Suggs, like he was one of the guys who, maybe not the most comfortable guy attacking off the dribble, but he can do it. They're down. They have 4 guys score more than 10 points per game, and 2 of them are hurt. That's just it. The points just aren't there. The points just aren't there.
I mean, game 1, the third leading scorer was Jonathan Isaac with 7 points. You're just not going to beat the Celtics in particular.
The third leading field goal attempt was Wendell Carter with 6. You just can't do it. You can't, there was a point in game 2 where the Magic were making a little bit of a run. They were within 10, 9, 8 points, somewhere like that. And I turned to one of the other reporters. I was like, if the Magic are going to win this game, Paolo Banchero is going to need to have a superhuman quarter. And we don't know if he's capable of that yet. Franz has done that on occasion. The one thing we don't know is if Paolo can have a superhuman quarter. He had that the first half against Cleveland in game 7. This is not the series to do that though. This is just Boston's just too good defensively. They'll load up on you. The Magic are the ones chasing, and it's really hard to chase the Celtics team down.
Yeah, and when you look at the tail of the tape, and as reductive as this is, Celtics had 18 more points from beyond the arc in game 1, and they had 10 more 3-point attempts. And then in game 2, it was 8 more attempts, which is still significant, and it led to 15 more points from 3-point range. It's just really tough for Orlando to overcome that in this series as you look at the way that things have played out, because I liked the process for Orlando yesterday and how they shifted their approach. And I can also kind of forgive to a pretty large extent some of the errors that just come with human nature. But if there are second guesses on your part from a Magic perspective, I'm curious to know what they are.
Yeah, the biggest issue that I had with the tactics in game 2, the Magic are switching 1 through 5 to deal with all the 3-point shooting. And I think in game 1 with Tatum in the game, they were able to get away with it because the ball is flowing through Tatum and Brown and not going into the post. They weren't looking for Porzingis at all. They did a pretty good job bottling up Porzingis a ton. With Tatum out of the game, Porzingis shifted up a notch in the pecking order, and the Celtics did a really good job getting him the ball in the post against Corey Joseph, against Anthony Black, against much smaller players. And it got to the point where the only thing they could do was foul. Kristaps Porzingis didn't shoot the ball great. That's
where he made his living the other night.
But he got to the line every time because the Magic can't leave the 3-point shooters to collapse on him. And they don't have a player tall enough to defend him. So you're either going to live with him hitting easy turnaround jumpers or easy floaters over him, or you got to either concede we can't switch on this. We got to play Jonathan Isaac more so that, we have a second big in the game because, Paolo's big, but he's not a big. You have another like kind of big body to be a shot blocker and be a threat around the basket. To me, it just felt like the Magic just kept getting burned on these switches. And while there's so much fear about the 3-point shooting, letting Boston parade to the line like that hurt just as much. It disrupts the flow of the game. It exasperates you because you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? I felt like Orlando needed to go away from the switching scheme in that lineup specifically. I don't think the Magic are about to change their starting lineup. I think they'll still go with the same 5. It's been really successful for them. I was really surprised how little they played Jonathan Isaac and how unwilling the Magic were to go to a Jonathan Isaac Goga Bitadze lineup, a Jonathan Isaac Wendell Carter lineup, even willing to shift Paolo up to the 3 or Franz to the 2, like go big, like go a little bit bigger. Franz can guard, can handle Jaylen Brown a little bit. He's, their best perimeter defender at this point. I think there has to be more of a willingness to match personnel. And if you give up a 3 here or there, so be it. But very clearly the game was pointing more toward post play, and Boston was just destroying them and keeping them down and pinning them down because of it. Orlando has to play with the lead, or they have to be within probably no more than 6 points. Once that lead got up to 10, 8, 9, 10, it was just like, this is trouble because now the Magic have to chase it a little bit. And that can't be how they play this game.
Yeah, not only are you now running uphill, and that's not the position you want to be in, especially on the road as the younger team, but the other thing that they were conceding is getting Jaylen Brown matched up with your opposing center, whether it's Goga in the second half, Wendell Carter Jr. That was a big part of how Jaylen Brown was able to have such a huge impact. It even unlocked more of Brown as a facilitator than we often see.
Yeah, and look, the Magic are really confident with Wendell Carter on smaller players. I agree. I thought Brown got to his spots really well. He played with, like, we talked about pace. He played with great pace. He attacked quickly, made decisions quickly. Like the Magic, again, they can't, they're so afraid. And this is what Boston does. This is why Boston's offense is so devastating. The Magic are so afraid to leave any of the 3-point shooters. It's almost like if Luke Kornet's in the game, that's a win for the Magic because they can kind of hover off of Luke Kornet. They don't have to hug him as tightly as some of the other players. They don't have to be as precise of where they're standing. They can load up a little bit. I thought Brown was just so decisive, and like I thought Carter did some good things. He held his own, but you're right. It's hard for a center to defend a wing, and Brown hit his shots. He hit some tough shots over him, but Carter moves his feet well, but he got crossed up a few times. Didn't like stumble over, but you hear the crowd ooh and ah over it. The Magic just kind of they're conceding bad matchups to your point, and the Celtics are taking advantage of them.
Yeah, there's even one where he got Carter on a switch on the left wing, and he backed up first. They kind of revved the engine, and then went downhill at him and scored. And so it'll be interesting to see how Orlando, because I agree, I think defensively are where probably the biggest adjustments have to come for them. We wrap with this question, Philip, and then I want to give you the floor to plug and promote anything you want from social media to your work. But do you buy or sell that this series ends in a sweep?
I am still confident the Magic can get one. Like I don't think that, like, they had a really good 3-point shooting game in game 1. If Tatum misses another game, and it certainly looks like it's trending in that direction, I do think the Magic are going to find a way to get tomorrow. And like, this is typical in a series where you're down 2-0, you come home, you feel that energy. But I'll say this, we're going to know within the first quarter of the game on Friday if the Magic are there to play. If Orlando gets out to a lead, like, Orlando needs to be the one to punch first. Like I thought game two, the task for Orlando was get to the first timeout in the game. Like, Boston's going to come out swinging. Like, they're talking some talk. They're trying to rev themselves up as much as anything else. You don't quite know how the officials are going to call the game. Like, be defensive, hold yourself firm. And I thought Orlando did that. I thought Orlando was in the game at the first mandatory timeout. I don't know. I don't think they forced Boston to call the first timeout, but essentially I think the Magic have to make Boston call the first timeout and not even get to the mandatory timeout. Like, make them call the first timeout. I think we'll know very early on how serious the Magic are potentially about winning this game. If the Magic if game 3 plays out the way game 1 and game 2 plays out, Boston's going to win. Obviously, Boston won those games, but if it comes down to like Orlando's hanging tough but trailing, then they have their offensive lull and the Celtics go up by 12. The Celtics are probably winning that game. And if they win game 3, I find it very hard to believe that the Magic are going to win game 4.
Yeah, you would know better than me, but I have a hard time believing that Orlando, first time back on their home floor, that they don't come out aggressive, energetic, physical, all those traits.
Look, it stinks I have to say this and know that this is going to be a fact. Orlando has to punch first because there will be green in the building. And I'm sure it's this way everywhere around the league. There are a lot of Boston transplants in Central Florida. I saw a lot of Celtics jersey. I saw a lot of Celtics gear on my flight.
It all goes back to that weather conversation we started with.
It goes back to the weather conversation. Orlando is still largely a transplant city. Look, in the conference finals, like I was in the locker room one time after, like a few years after 2010, Dwight was complaining about how many Celtics fans were at the 2010 conference finals. Like it is a thing. I think it'll still be like 70-30 in favor of the Magic. Magic fans are a lot passionate, a lot louder than they were. I don't think Boston fans will necessarily be able to steal the bowl or steal the city. But they'll still be present enough to be loud. And if the Magic don't punch first, those fans will make their presence heard. They've got to engage their crowd. They've got to involve their crowd. This is a team that operates on vibes and goodwill. And getting that energy from the fans and from the crowd is essential if they want to steal a game in this series.
Yeah, what we've seen a lot this year at Celtics road games is if the away crowd gets loud enough, they just crank up whatever PA music, whatever they can come up with to try and drown it out.
You'll see on Friday, the bass is already very loud in that building. It is a loud building in the wrong ways.
Well, it's my first time there, so I'm very excited for it. I can't wait. And also, I don't see how anyone could be ruling out. Like, I firmly believe, especially when you look at the Celtics on their injury front with not just Tatum, but also Jaylen Brown, and even Drew Holiday is listed as questionable going into tomorrow's game, though I certainly expect that he plays. But I still think there's a very realistic possibility that we hear the Orlando Magic hit the theme song at the end of one of these next 2 games.
I mean, if they don't, then we won't hear the song again until October. So just gotta get one. They have a button and everything.
Right, they're ready to go. Social media team wants to fire it off at the end of one of these next 2 tilts. He is Philip Rossman-Reich, and the floor is yours right now to, like I said, promote anything you want.
Yeah, obviously the best place to find my written work is at orlandomagicdaily.com. You can find my podcast, Locked On Magic, wherever you download podcasts. I'm also on YouTube. Just search for Locked On Magic. You get to see my smiling face. I was in Boston the last few games, so you get to see the TD Garden. There's a wild John Corrales in the background of my episode the other day.
Love to see it.
Yeah, no, John's the best. Not to promote another pod on here, but there's that. Sorry about that.
It's in the Locked On family. It's all good.
In the Locked On family. Yeah. We're all friends here. But yeah, Locked On Magic is the best place to find my podcast work if you like hearing me and seeing my face. And then my written work's at orlandomagicdaily.com.
Definitely take him up on that, folks. As they like to say, Philip knows ball and does an outstanding job. So exceptional work. Follow him on social media at a minimum, but certainly check out everything that he has to offer because it is insightful and enjoyable content. Philip, thank you for taking the time to join us here on the Celtics Rundown live stream. That concludes this edition. We will be back after Game 4 with a new special guest that I am going to continue to tease, but we'll ultimately let you know before we go on the air on the heels of Game 4. Thank you. Didn't know if you had something to say there.
No. I was excited.
I appreciate you leaning in.
I was excited for your tease. That's a good tease.
Yeah, we got something lined up that I'm pretty excited about. For now, all we're going to do is leave the good folks hanging. But again, I promise you, as we get closer to the next live stream, I will let you know so you don't have to come on and see who it is. Although maybe I'll change with the wins on that and prove pickle. But now I'll let you guys know. Philip, once again, much appreciated. And that concludes the latest edition here of the Celtics Rundown live stream.